Will you remark further on the bill before the chamber? Good evening, Senator Sampson.
Good evening, Madam President. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 658 as amended by the House. Just to be clear, we are talking about the proper language before us. I'd just like to confirm through you, Madam President, that we are indeed discussing LCO number 10402, which is a strike-all amendment adopted by the House, which will now become Senate Bill 658, and that's how we have it before this chamber. I just want to make sure we're talking about the right language. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, that is the correct LCO number.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. As was just stated, this is a bill that came to the Senate. I believe it passed on a party line vote. I spoke against the bill at that time, and I believe I highlighted many of its shortcomings and significant concerns. So it went to the House, and I believe it met with some opposition there and has been modified, and it is now back before us in its modified form. I'll state from the outset that the bill is significantly better than it was when it left this chamber the last time, and I am thankful for that. However, Madam President, I would still say that this was a bad bill the first time I saw this, and it's still a bad bill. And I'm going to just go through it very quickly and talk about what it is. The bill is titled An Act Requiring Employers to Recall Certain Laid-Off Workers in Order of Seniority. And that is more or less what it does, is it uses the government and its ability to regulate free enterprise and private companies through business regulation to force them to recall certain laid-off workers in order of seniority is what the bill is proposing to do. I objected to this the first time on the basis that I don't believe that this body has the right to make that sort of determination for a private business, and that this bill goes pretty far in undermining the system of at-will employment that exists in our state. And at the end of the day, I just want to remind my colleagues in this chamber that we do not own or manage the businesses that are affected by this bill. And we should not be writing laws as if we did. I think that it is very presumptuous. I also think it is in direct conflict with our duty and responsibility, which I will remind everyone is to work as representatives of our constituents. We are not their bosses. We are not their masters, and we are not the managers of their businesses. We are, in fact, their representatives. And I would also point out that far too often in this chamber, most recently, we are passing legislation that takes a side in almost every interaction between our constituents. And in this one, it is an interaction between employers and employees. And in this particular case, we are drafting a law. I say we, I mean the majority has put forth this law, or proposal for a law, that would, in fact, take the side of the employee over the employer. And I don't take sides, Madam President. I want to write policy that is mutually beneficial to every citizen of this state and for the purpose of creating the most prosperous Connecticut that we can have. And I believe that the most prosperous Connecticut will come from freedom and the opportunities that people have to enter into business agreements, employment arrangements, and make their own choices about how they're going to do business in this state, and therefore create jobs, opportunity, and a better way of life for all of us. And this type of bill is something that I will stand up against every time and point out why it is damaging to the concept that America is defined by, which is that all people are free to make their own choices and to pursue their own happiness. This gets in the way of that, Madam President, because it essentially sets up rules and requirements that stand in the way of that freedom to choose and to pursue as one might wish. There is a few changes to this bill, unlike was described from the outset. The gentle lady mentioned that the period that COVID-19 would be considered, it was changed from 2024, now only through May 1 of 2022. But there are quite a few other changes in the bill. The very first one I notice, I believe, is on line 32, which is in subsection 6 of section 1. And I was just curious to ask through you, Madam President, why is it we are defining enterprise to not include cruise line companies? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner.
I would have to check on that. That was in the underlying bill. I don't believe that question came up at that time, but if you want to give me a minute, can we take a short pause? Stand at ease.
Chamber will stand at ease. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, that was the bill. That was the way the bill was crafted in committee after taking public testimony and a hearing, and it seemed appropriate to the committee to not include cruise line as enterprises.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the bill that passed the Senate and went to the House before me, and looking at the same section, subsection 6 of section 1, lines 29 through 32 of the LCO, which was, I think, 9247 is the one that passed out of here, and that language was not there. So this language that enterprise does not include cruise line companies was added by the House, and that's why I was asking. Since we're here attempting to pass a bill that has already passed one chamber, been modified, and has come back, those modifications are the critical component of our conversation tonight. So I think that's why I was trying to focus on that. I guess I didn't frame that in the form of a question, but I'd still like an answer to why we are not including cruise line companies and why the House sought fit to make that change. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I can't tell you what was in the mind of the House in doing that. It's a House amendment that is before us, and they obviously deliberated over it and made that determination.
Senator Sampson.
All right. Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the answer. I mean, you initially had indicated to me that that's what was in the mind of the committee, but the bill that we passed out of this chamber initially did not contain that. So it did, in fact, come from the House. And I don't know either, but I'm afraid that you and I are going to have to cast a vote along with the rest of the members of the state Senate without understanding the reason why cruise line companies were not included. In the same section, it says 15 or more employees. And I remember asking the last time why we chose that number, that this affects only certain types of businesses. Enterprises, as they are defined as hotels, lodging house, food service contractor, building service enterprise, with only 15 or more employees. And I think that's a very narrow definition, which I'm thankful for, Madam President, that this bill is not going to affect many more individuals and businesses in our state. But it strikes me that if we believe that there is good policy here before us, why would we be limiting it in scope to only businesses with 15 or more employees, or only these particular businesses, and specifically not including cruise companies? It says to me that someone's not comfortable enough with this policy to actually put it into effect. And they shouldn't be, Madam President, because this is lousy policy. Another significant change is in subsection 11. And this is something that we had a great deal of conversation with the last time, which was the notion that this original legislation extended beyond those that were laid off as a result of COVID-19 and the executive orders that were issued by the governor as a result, and included other non-economic disciplinary reasons. And I remember asking about what those were. I'm thankful, Madam President, that that was removed in the House. So now this bill is limited only to individuals who are laid off due to a lack of business or a reduction or furlough of the employer's workforce due to the COVID-19 pandemic, including the executive orders. And I will use this as an opportunity to remind the members of this circle and anyone watching that, generally speaking, it is only because of the executive orders. Some businesses were classified as essential and allowed to continue working, and other businesses were considered non-essential. And the governor is the one that made that determination. And the results, the layoffs that resulted here, if they are a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, including executive orders, then I believe that it's the governor of the state of Connecticut that is responsible for those layoffs and not necessarily the laid-off employer. They were simply trying to survive as a business in our state. There's also a question that I had asked the first time, which I think is very, very important, because in this section, laid off employee means any employee who was employed by the employer for 6 months or more in the 12 months preceding March 10th, which is, I guess, what we're considering the beginning of COVID-19, and whose most recent separation from active service or whose failure to be scheduled and so on was due to a lack of business, etc. And I had asked whether or not this applied to individuals who quit or were fired. Through you, Madam President, would the gentlelady know if this applies to the people who quit their jobs during this period as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic or the executive orders, or they were fired, or is it simply folks that were actually issued a pink slip? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner.
Through you, Madam President, this bill talks about laid-off employees, and there's a general knowledge of what laid-off means. It does not include people who quit or were fired, although I assume that if it was being litigated, one might want to look at to make sure that it wasn't a constructive discharge that could have been, in fact, a layoff. But clearly, the idea of a layoff is someone where the work is reduced and the employer no longer needs as many employees.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't disagree with that, the lady's response, other than to say that there are other options beyond laying someone off when there is a reduction in the workforce required because of a lack of business or because the governor, puts forward an executive order that closes an operation or part of it. That might include a termination, which I'm not sure even after that response would be included. But we had this conversation on the first bill, and I do have some concerns that this will extend beyond people that are specifically laid off and offered a pink slip. In line 66 through 69, subsection 15, it defines COVID-19 as a respiratory disease designated by the World Health Organization. But then it goes on to say, and any related mutation thereof recognized by said organization as a communicable respiratory disease. What concerns me about that, Madam President, is that I don't think the World Health Organization should be making law for the state of Connecticut. And essentially this section does exactly that. It puts them in charge of determining what particular respiratory diseases will fall into the category of requiring this new law, if this becomes a law passed by this chamber and signed by the governor. I think we should be more careful going forward in determining that we, in fact, the elected representatives of the citizens of our state, make those determinations and not some foreign entity. I also noticed that there is another new section that was not mentioned in the list of changes, and that is something somewhat shocking to me, and that is lines 70 through 72, which is subsection B, subsection 1 of section 1, which says, not later than 30 days after the layoff of an employee before May 1st, 2022, an employer shall submit to the Labor Department an affidavit stating the reasons for the decision. And I just find this shocking, Madam President, that in a state where we have at-will employment, that we are now going to require employers to not only specify the reasons for a layoff, which they are not required to do under our laws currently, because it is an at-will state, but not only do they have to have a reason, they have to actually submit that reason to the Labor Department, and they have to do it in the form of an affidavit. I find it absurd, actually, that we're even debating this bill on the final night of the legislative session. There's a reason why this bill has been jammed up and has taken its time to get back to us, and I think it's because everybody knows that it's somewhat problematic and goes far beyond what our current labor law in the state is. This bill goes on to say that not later than 5 days after a job becomes available at an employer, the employer is now required to notify all of its laid-off employees, and it goes on to talk about who is qualified for the position. Lines 80 through 82 specify that where more than one employee is qualified for an available position, the employer shall offer the position to the employee with the greatest length of service at the employment site. Madam President, through you, are any other items considered relevant rather than just the greatest length of service, such as skill level, attendance, cooperation? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, this bill and the amendment contemplates using length of service as the determining factor in which worker would be recalled.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate that. And I brought it up specifically since this is a common theme that we've seen this legislative session. And unfortunately, it's not been a consistent theme, because we've had bills come before this chamber that go out of their way. Like there was a recent bill regarding a mandate on employers about providing a space for breastfeeding, but also included some language updating the gender pay gap. And I was very pleased, Madam President, to see that we added in that bill language that said that employers have to take into consideration someone's skill level, attendance, disciplinary record, and so on. But yet in this bill, it does not include that information at all. It says only the greatest length of service. So that means to me that if I run a business and I'm forced to shut down by the governor as a result of COVID, and I want to start bringing back my employees now, I am going to have to bring back the person with the greatest length of service, even if I prefer to bring back a different employee because they're more reliable, they're better skilled at the job I need them for. But no, this body's going to say, forget all that. We don't allow you to make your own decisions. We're new managers in your establishment, and you have to do it our way, and we're going to tell you exactly how you're going to bring back your employees. That doesn't sound like any America that I recognize. And as a result, Madam President, I have an amendment. It is LCO 10732. I ask that it be called, and I be given leave of the chamber to summarize. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, would you please call the LCO?
LCO number 10732, Senate Schedule B.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This amendment would actually add in the language that says where more than one employee is entitled to preference for a position, the employer shall consider each entitled employee's skill level, attendance, and disciplinary record, along with the length of service, with the employer before offering the position to any employee. This is a common sense amendment. I urge adoption. I move adoption. And I would like a roll call vote. Thank you, Madam President.
And the question is on adoption, and we will have a roll call vote when we vote on the amendment. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. I oppose this amendment and urge my colleagues to vote no.
Will you remark further? If not, a roll call vote has been requested, so I will open the vote. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. This is on Senate Amendment E of Senate Bill 658. This is on Senate Amendment E of Senate Bill 658. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate on Senate Bill 658, Senate Amendment E. This is Senate Amendment E of Senate Bill 658. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate.
Have all the senators voted? Have all the senators voted? The machine is locked. Mr. Clerk, please announce the tally.
Senate Bill 658, this is Senate Amendment E. Total number voting 35, total voting yea 12, total voting nay 23, absent not voting 1.
Amendment fails. Will you remark further on the legislation before the chamber? Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm disappointed that amendment failed, since I thought it was a very common sense amendment, that we should leave it in the hands of employers when it comes to determining which laid off employees return to work, that they might take into consideration that employee's length of service along with skill level, attendance, and disciplinary record. but I'm afraid that I'm in the minority in that position. Following through on the bill, the next several lines I also found to be somewhat absurd. It says a laid-off employee is qualified for a position if the employee held the same or similar position at the enterprise at the time of the employee's most recent separation. And then it says, Madam President, it says, or can be qualified for the position with the same training that would be provided to a new employee hired for such a position. Madam President, would you do me a favor and bang that gavel for me so that I can hear myself thinking here?
Senator Sampson, you do have a point. There are a lot of side conversations going, so we are going to ask people to give their attention to the debate so that we can finish this session. So therefore, Senator Sampson, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate that very much. I just wanted to keep my train of thought, and I was having a little difficulty. So this section gives me great pause because I believe that an employer is the person that should be making the determination about who is actually qualified for the position, since it's the employer that creates that position and also would want to fill that position. And to suggest that this body has the power to determine who is qualified versus the employer themselves is absurd on its face. And to go so far as to say that this body wants to manage that business in a way that says that as long as that person can be trained, they're qualified. I think it's a ridiculous definition of qualified, Madam President, and one of the reasons why I voted against this legislation before, and I think why it's before us on the final night of the legislative session. Just going on, subsection C, it says, an offer of employment to a laid-off employee pursuant to the section shall be at substantially the same employment site. And I don't know what that means. I mean, if someone moves their business, what is substantially? Is it if they move it across the street, they have to hire the same employees back? Or if they move it to the next town over? Or what if it is in the same country but not, on the same block? I don't know who's going to make that determination. And as I have pointed out many times in this chamber, it is our job to determine what the parameters are when we write laws. Our constituents deserve clear laws. They deserve to know. That's why we make the speeding limit some exact amount. Whether it's applied that way or not is a different factor, of course. But we don't say around 55 miles an hour. We say 55 miles an hour. And we don't say substantially at the same employment site for a reason, but yet it exists in this bill, and it should not. Just moving on, there is a following section that says that the employer must give the employee not less than 5 days in which to accept or decline an offer. So you have a restaurant, for example, that's about to open back up because the governor's executive orders are allowing them to, and they've taken a few weeks and months to get their business up and going and ready again, and they're about to bring people back on board, and they've got to call people back. Now they have to wait 5 days to open their business to determine whether or not those employees are going to accept the offer. That's not fair, Madam President. I know how much people in this room like to use the word fair all the time, but that's not fair. It's not fair to the business owner who is, number one, providing the employment for these folks to be put in a spot where he cannot proceed. In fact, we're also putting all of the other employees' jobs at stake because they need this business to be successful in order to have that job. Another absurd section, Madam President, and I'm getting used to just talking about all the absurdities in this bill. Subsection E, 113 to 117. Each employer that declines to rehire a laid-off employee on the grounds of lack of qualifications, because maybe the position is different now, and instead hires an individual other than that laid-off employee, get this, shall, in other words, must, by force of government, provide to that laid off employee a written notice, not later than 30 days after the date. This is an at-will employment state. It has been that way forever. I don't understand why we are attempting to undo that with this legislation. Moving on. It says under 121, the requirements of this section shall apply under any of the following circumstances. And what concerns me, I know that we can see a difference between the bill that passed the Senate earlier this year and what has come back to us from the House, that there is a paragraph removed that says the ownership of the employer changed after the employee was laid off, etc. I see that was removed. But through you, Madam President, is it the policy in the bill before us that a business owner would have to apply this requirements of this bill, including all of the job offers and notification and affidavits to the Department of Labor, etc., if they were a brand new owner of a business that had an employee that fit these qualifications? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Would you restate the question?
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I would be delighted to restate the question. I noticed that in the bill that passed this chamber earlier this year, there was a section that said that the terms and conditions of this bill would apply in the case where the ownership of an employer changed after a laid-off employee was laid off, but continues to conduct the same or similar operations. But my question is, even though that was changed, I'm not certain that that policy still does not exist because of lines 125 through 127. The question very simply stated, I'll try and make it a little more clear, Madam President, and that is, would a business owner who acquires a business operation where an employee had been laid off under the circumstances laid out in subsection 46 that or subsection 11, which describes a laid-off employee, would it have to apply to them also if they acquired a business and there was a person laid off? Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, the lines in the bill do very specifically identify when that would continue to apply, even if there was a change of ownership. And that, I believe, begins on line 123.
Senator Sampson.
And thank you, Madam President. That's what I thought. I just found it remarkable that the House took the time to remove the language that says the ownership of an employer changed after a laid-off employee was laid off, but the enterprise continues to conduct the same or similar operations, as if they were trying to get away from that as a policy point, but must possibly missed the idea that it's actually repeated using different words in lines 125 through 127, where it says this section shall apply under all of the circumstances, including substantially all of the assets of the employer were acquired by another entity that conducts the same or similar operations using substantially the same assets. Again, the words substantially and same or similar, all very, very vague, which I've already drawn attention to. But this concerns me because I'm reading this to say that if a business went out of business as a result of the executive orders, as a result of COVID, and it was a Mexican restaurant, for example, and that owner sold all of his equipment and his location to a new employer who wanted to open an Italian restaurant, I would like to know, through you, Madam President, whether or not the owner of the Italian restaurant who's using this similar location and similar operation, another restaurant, albeit a different type of food, would have to hire back the same chef from the Mexican restaurant. Through you, Madam President.
Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe this is clear that if substantially all of the assets of the employer were acquired by another entity, then in fact they would have, employees would have those rights.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm speechless, Madam President. I hope there are people watching this. I really hope that the citizens of Connecticut and the press of Connecticut is watching what we are doing here. This law would tell someone that buys the assets of a failed business after COVID has to take employees from the previous business. And not only that, they've got to hire the Mexican chef to be the chef for their Italian restaurant. I'm Mexican cuisine, Madam President, just to be clear. I'm not talking about the ethnic background of the person. I'm talking about the type of food that they cook. So I can't believe that we would make a law like this. It shocks me to my core. Just moving on, subsection I. An employer that terminates, refuses to reemploy, or takes any other adverse action against any laid-off employee shall provide to the employee at the time of the termination a detailed written statement on the reason or reasons for the termination. Our current law in this Connecticut, in this state, does not require that. We are in an at-will employment state. It says that if an employee wants to quit, they can quit. And if an employer wants to end a business relationship with an employee, they can end it. This is going to change that, to set a precedent that says that from now on, employees are required to receive a detailed written statement. I don't know, Madam President, if there's a fine for this, but I do see that the following section says that a laid-off employee aggrieved by a violation of this section may bring a civil action in the Superior Court. You're creating a situation where someone can sue them now because the person who laid them off did not provide an appropriate reason in writing. In a state that historically has been a free state when it comes to employment, where employers and employees worked out the details of their employment situation together. I kind of went out of order on my amendments, Madam President, because I was waiting for them to be filed. But I'm going to just jump back quickly before we finish the bill, because we're almost to the end, to offer another amendment that I think is critical, and that is LCO number 10734. I ask that the clerk call this amendment, and I be given leave of the chamber to summarize.
Mr. Clerk.
LCO number 10734, Senate Schedule F.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. This redefines the section that we discussed earlier, subsection 11, which defines what a laid-off employee is, subject to the bill before us, which is the person who was whose most recent separation from active service or whose failure to be scheduled for customary seasonal work by that employer occurred after March 10th and was due to a lack of business or reduction or furlough of the employer's workforce due to COVID-19 and the executive orders. And forgive me for reading it, I just want to make sure that it's very clear what the bill says. This would add the language that says that also someone who did not already reject an offer after March 10th and before the effective date of the section, an offer of employment. Because I believe, Madam President, there are a great number of folks that would fall into that category because we are now several weeks into the reopening of the state of Connecticut, and many of these businesses are now opening again, and I'm quite certain that these employers have gone back to many of these laid-off employees offering them jobs, but they are not considered in this bill. If they have already been offered a job and rejected it. So I think for clarification's sake, there is no reason why we should be creating such a burden on an employer, number one, about all of these notifications, affidavits, written statements, and the potential for civil liability when they've already done the job of offering someone a job. I move adoption of the amendment, Madam President, and I'd like a roll call vote. It's a very straight up vote. If you believe that an employer's already done their job, if the person was offered employment and rejected it, and they should not be subject to the requirements of this bill, you vote yes. If you believe the employer is still subject to these things, even if they've already done their part, you vote no.
Thank you, Senator. Will you remark further on the amendment before the chamber, Senator Kushner? And we will have a roll call on the amendment. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam President. I oppose the amendment and urge my colleagues to vote no.
If not, a roll call vote has been requested. I've opened the vote. Mr. Clerk, would you please announce the roll call?
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate on Senate Amendment F for Senate Bill 658. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate for Senate Amendment F of Senate Bill 658. This is Senate Bill 658, Senate Amendment F. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate on Senate Amendment F for Senate Bill 658. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate.
Have all the senators voted? Have all the senators voted? The machine is locked. Mr. Clerk, please announce the tally on the amendment.
Senate Amendment F of Senate Bill 658. Total number voting 35, total number voting yea 12, total voting nay 23, absent not voting 1.
The amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Again, I'm sorry to see my second amendment again fail on a party line vote. It was a very straightforward proposal, which was we should leave out the employers that have made a good faith effort to go back to their employees that were laid off. But I do understand that this bill has been around the block more than once now, and its future would be uncertain at this late hour if we were to modify it and have to send it back to the House once again. And it's unfortunate because I offered similar amendments the first time around, and I implore my colleagues sometimes just to listen to the value in what I'm saying. You might disagree on much of it, but I'm hopeful that there is common ground. Every time I get up with an amendment, it is with the sincere hope that folks will see the value of the compromise that I am offering. Just continuing with the bill, the final sections of the bill have to do with the punishment or the liability created for an employer who fails to follow what I believe are really over-the-top requirements that are contrary to our state's historical employment arrangement, which is, as I've mentioned several times now, an at-will arrangement. I notice in the final paragraph something that I find very interesting, which is that this does not apply in cases where there is what is described as a bona fide collective bargaining agreement. And I suppose this is a reference to something called supersedence, which is a policy that we have in the state of Connecticut that allows collective bargaining agreements actually to supersede Connecticut state statute. So if we all agree that something should be a law, and the House does too, and we pass it and the governor signs it, it's still not a law if a collective bargaining agreement says otherwise. And that makes me wonder, Madam President, why such a contract would supersede state law but not an individual employment contract between an employer and an employee. I mean, would not that individual have the same rights? And in fact, I've made the argument many times on this floor, Madam President, that collective bargaining agreements don't have rights. And the employees as a group don't even have rights, but the individual employees do, because there's no such thing as collective rights. Rights only apply to individual folks and not to groups. But my question remains the same. Why on earth would we say it's okay to allow a collective bargaining agreement to supersede what I presume the majority who's going to vote this bill into law thinks is good policy? If it's such good policy, why would we allow a supersedence to exist in a collective bargaining agreement? That doesn't make any sense to me, Madam President. I think it's absurd on its face. We're either making laws that apply to every person equally, or we're doing something wrong and in direct contradiction to our American system of laws and justice. The idea that a collective bargaining agreement would have more value in protecting the rights of those group of employees than an individual employment agreement between an employer and an employee, to me, is facetious. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If an employer and an employee, who are free people in our society, come to an agreement about what the terms of that employment arrangement is, then what does the government have to say with it? Why do we need any of us here telling them what to do? Isn't that between them? That's the whole focus of much of the Labor Committee debate this year, is whether or not people are actually free and they can make their own choices in employment arrangements. I believe that that's the way our country was founded. That I believe that is a core part of our value system, that employer-employee arrangement works best when it is just between people who are doing it because they want to. And I also believe that that is the reason why we live in the greatest country on earth, because when you allow freedom to continue, many, many great things happen. New ideas, new innovations occur because of that freedom. But when we're telling people, nope, don't even bother getting involved in a business, or don't buy that failed Mexican restaurant, because if you open your Italian restaurant, we're going to torture you with a bunch of bureaucracy coming from the state of Connecticut. It's bad policy. And so is this supersedence clause, Madam President. I have one final amendment, and that amendment is LCO 10735. I ask that the clerk very generously call it and permit me the leave of chamber to summarize.
Yes, sir. Mr. Clerk, would you call that LCO, please?
Absolutely. LCO number 10735. This is Senate Schedule G.
Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a very simple amendment that adds at the very end of the bill, after subsection K, a short paragraph: notwithstanding any other provision of the general statutes, an employer that rehires a laid-off employee pursuant to this section, so we're talking about someone who's following this law, shall not be held civilly liable for violating any prohibition on discriminatory hiring or for violating any affirmative action policy in connection with such rehiring. I move adoption, and I'd ask for a roll call vote and an opportunity to speak in favor of the amendment after the others.
So we will have a roll call vote on the amendment, and the question is on adoption. Senator Kushner, will you remark on the amendment?
I oppose the amendment and urge that my colleagues vote no.
Thank you, Senator. Will you remark further on the amendment before the chamber? Will you remark further on the amendment before the chamber? If not, I will open the voting machine. Mr. Clerk, would you up? Okay, nobody's voted. Senator Sampson?
Thank you very much, Madam President. I was hoping there was going to be some dialogue on this amendment, but I will just simply encourage my colleagues to support the amendment. It's something that applies only to people that have complied with the bill before us. We don't want to see someone end up in trouble and become civilly liable because they followed these requirements, because I can see that happening. If someone has to follow this requirement and bring someone back based on seniority, they might very well find themselves in direct conflict with other federal and state law about discrimination, affirmative action, and so forth. And this is designed to protect the employer in those cases. Again, Madam President, I urge my colleagues to vote yes. A vote yes is to actually support people that are willing to comply with this law. A vote no leaves them open to potential liability. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you remark further on the amendment? Will you remark further on the amendment? If not, the machine is open. Please announce the vote, Mr. Clerk.
Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. This will be Senate Amendment G of Senate Bill 658. Senate Amendment G of Senate Bill 658. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate on Senate Bill 658, Senate Amendment G. This is Senate Amendment G of Senate Bill 658. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate on Senate Amendment G of Senate Bill 658. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate on Senate Amendment G of Senate Bill 658. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate on Senate Amendment G of Senate Bill 658. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate.
Have all the senators voted? The machine is locked. Mr. Clerk, please announce the tally on the amendment, please.
Senate Amendment G of Senate Bill 658. Total number voting 35. Total voting yea 12. Total voting nay 23. Absent not voting 1.
Amendment fails. Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Once again, I'm disappointed that my third attempt to improve the language before us failed on a party line vote. My efforts have been sincere, Madam President, in trying to take what I think is a questionable piece of legislation and try and improve it in the most really insignificant of ways to prevent roadblocks for the constituents I represent. Since my requests have fallen on deaf ears twice now, and I've offered several amendments on this bill. The first time it was before this chamber, which failed on a party line vote, and I'm back again 0 for 3 on my amendments. I want to direct my comments to the governor of the state. Governor Lamont, I hope you hear me on this bill. Your colleagues in the House and Senate did not see the danger of the bill that is before us, but I hope that you do. I know that you're a thoughtful person. I know that when bills cross your desk after leaving this body, you are going to take the time to make sure that they are good policy before signing them into law. This is a candidate for a veto. Mr. Governor, I urge you to veto this bill because it is setting up a horrible trap for people who are simply trying to get back to work in our state. The damage done from COVID and as a result of the executive orders forcing businesses to close has put many, many restaurateurs and other folks that would end up targeted by this legislation in a very, very bad predicament. And I don't think we should be passing legislation that is going to create a trap for them where they end up with civil liability or worse because we have set up rules of the game which are just completely unfair. The employer and employee relationship is between them. We do not own these businesses. We do not manage these businesses. We should let those folks work it out. We have laws in place already, Madam President, to prevent wrongful termination and discrimination and things like that. Those laws serve us well. There is no reason to create a policy like this that imposes so much on an employer as if the employer doesn't know himself how to run his business. I hope the governor recognizes what I do, that this is terrible policy, absurdly written, and very dangerous. We got to stop it before it continues. I urge you to veto it, sir. Thank you.
Further, if not, I will open the vote. Mr. Clerk, please announce the vote.
Madam President. Madam President.
Oh, I so apologize.
Thank you, Madam President. Speaking in support of the bill, in concurrence with the House, I certainly endorse the comments of Senator Kushner, our distinguished chair of the Labor and Public Employees Committee, who has worked so hard and so effectively on this and so many other bills in the course of the session.
Pardon me,
Yes,
Senator Looney, I
would-
do apologize. I said we would open the vote before I recognized you, and we do have one vote that is on, we have two votes that are on the board. So I don't know if that is problematic, but
Yep.
Meeting roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate. Senate Bill 658 as amended by Senate A and House A. Immediate roll call vote has been ordered in the Senate on Senate Bill 658 as amended by Senate A and House A. Immediate roll call vote in the Senate on Senate Bill 658 as amended by Senate A and House A.
Have all senators voted? Have all senators voted? If all senators voted, the vote will be locked. Mr. Clerk, when you're ready, please announce the tally.
I am ready. Senate Bill 658, as amended by Senate A and House A. Total number voting 36. Total voting yea 19. Total voting nay 17. Absent not voting 0.
The item passes.